I still remember the feeling of hunger nearly 80 years later. When I came off the bus here, I counted my money at least 3 times. I had exactly $25.47. Up to 75% of the working individuals do not like their job. Some people say to me, "So John, when are you going to retire?" I said, "Well, I'll retire when I'm old."
Welcome to Inspired by Success, the podcast where I deep dive into the mindset of successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, and thought leaders. Get ready to be inspired and gain valuable insights to unlock your true potential. Ever heard of the saying, where there's a will, there's a way? Meet someone who lives it like no other. From scavenging for food during World War II to founding a leading North American company, John Brink's life is a testament to resilience and achieving dreams against all odds. At 83, John is a CEO, author, and even one of North America's oldest competitive bodybuilders. His new book, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream, shares his blueprint for a purpose-driven life. Get ready to be amazed by this incredible visionary. Please welcome to the show, John Brink.
Thanks for having me, Linda.
You've had an incredible life. Tell us about your journey, and I'm curious to know what made you want to start your own business from having nothing to being where you are now. It's really incredible. Tell us a bit more about it.
So I was born in 1940 in Holland, northeastern part of Holland, actually. And as you already know and indicated, it was at the beginning of the Second World War that started in April of 1940. We lived in a little town in the northeastern part of Holland, within about 10-15 minutes from the German border. Obviously, the German army invaded Holland in the Blitzkrieg in between April and May of 1940. My mom and dad were married in 1938, had a son first and then a daughter. And then when the war started, she was pregnant with me and I was born November the 1st, 1940. It was a challenge with my dad. The last time they heard from him was before the bombing of Rotterdam, and then for 5 years thereafter, they wouldn't know if he survived or had died in the bombing of Rotterdam, and the thousands of people died. So for my mom and the 3 kids, 2 initially, and then when I came along with 3, it was a real challenge, and things were a real difficult period, obviously, for her. But everybody all around her had the same issues. So people were pretty much on their own in terms of trying to survive. So the first thing that I remember when I was 3.5 to 4 years old was when the Allied forces started bombing Germany. And I can remember even now still the sounds of hundreds of planes, hundreds of them in the air on the way to Germany and bombing them. And a lot of times in the evenings, my mother would go outside with us, not to watch the planes, but more she felt safer outside than inside. And in the distance, we could see cities right across the border, Hamburg, Bremen, Wilhelmshaven, Kiel, all close by, relatively speaking. In the distance, we could see cities burning and planes coming back that either been shot at or crashing in some cases. So I still remember today all of that. Then the next thing that I remember and stands out in my mind was the winter of 1944-45. They called it the hunger winter because Germany had cut off all the food that flowed into Holland, in northern Holland as well. And we used to go, the kids, myself, my sister and brother, a year and 2 years older than me, we would go every morning into the railroad yards with gunny bags and try to find anything edible or burnable. And it was also, the winter 1944 was called the hunger winter because it was not only the food, but also it was the coldest winter on record. And I still remember the feeling of hunger. Even now still, nearly 80 years later or 70 years later, I can still feel that feeling of hunger. And then at the same time, the feeling of cold, because we only had a very small room that she tried to keep warm with the little bit that we could find as fuel. And so we still remember that. The next thing in my mind is that when we got liberated on April the 12th, 1945 by the Canadian Army that liberated or northern part of Holland, and most of Holland was the Allied forces, but in particular the Canadian Army liberated northern Holland and a big part of the rest of Holland. So I remember that, and and our city was liberated April the 12th, 1945, and it made such an impression on me that I always knew from that point forward I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And it would be just a question of when, not if, but when. I tried to go when I was 17, and then my parents wouldn't let me, too young yet. And then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force and was in there for more than 2 years, and then worked in the lumber industry actually in Holland for a number of years. And then when I was 23, I left Holland to go to Canada. And I had not only the dream of going to Canada, but I wanted to build a lumber mill because my dad works in the lumber industry and my grandfather was a master carpenter. And so I wanted to build my own lumber mill. And so I wanted to go to British Columbia. And for all of our guests watching us, British Columbia in Canada is on the west coast. It's a beautiful, beautiful province, lots of timber, big province. And I left Holland with nothing. I wanted to start from the bottom. So I left Holland, couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, left it with a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes. And when I left Schiphol in Amsterdam by air to fly to Montreal, I left Schiphol with $150, flew to Montreal, took the train across Canada. It's a long way to go, 4 days, 5 nights. Arrived in Vancouver, went to the immigration department there, and then told them what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, it was a German fellow. I could speak some German to him. I spoke some German and told him what I wanted to do. He said, go to central British Columbia to a city called Prince George. That's where I am today. It's about 500 miles north of Vancouver, or for our European friends watching, 800 kilometers, which is exactly in the center of British Columbia, so a very big province. And so when I came off the bus here in Prince George, I had my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. I counted my money at least 3 times. I had exactly $25.47.
Wow.
But what I had plenty of, if you look at the bottom, attitude. I've always been an optimist. No matter how tough today is, I know tomorrow will be a better day. I always had passion. Whatever I do, I give it 150%. And work ethic. I work harder than anybody, even still today, nearly 84, 83 and 3/4 or 83 and a half. I get up at 5:30 in the mornings. I always think I'm late. I always make my bed. So, and I still have lots of dreams and lots of passion looking forward. And that's kind of what I did, and started from the bottom up here, being a cleanup man first, then lumber pilot. And then within a year, I was a superintendent of a sawmill here, one of the biggest ones. And then within 10 years, I started my own company, the Brink group of companies. And today, it's not really about that, but we have 10 different companies and we've been quite successful. And underlying it is always been, for me, attitude, passion, work ethic.
I love it. And the story is so inspiring as well. Coming from nothing, remembering the starvation point and the cold as well, and using that. I think you've used that as fuel to help you become a better entrepreneur, become a better person, and not be in that same position too. So it's very, very inspiring because you didn't become a victim, you just used it as well. There's so many things that I want to ask about your life as well, because you've had such an incredible journey. Let's talk about your company first, and business and entrepreneurship. So what's the biggest challenges that you've had when starting the Brink Forest products and the company, and how did you build it and scale it to where it is now?
That's a very good question, Linda, because I get a lot of times that question when I tell them, because they said, okay, yeah, that costs a lot of money to build a company like that. And how can you start something like that with 2547? And that is the right question. And saying the advantage likely that I had is that my passion was lumber manufacturing, because my dad was involved. My grandfather was a master carpenter. Another part of this story likely is, and at some point you will ask me the question, or if not, then I just want to tell you, is that academically, I was not overly successful in Holland. In fact, I was a bit of a failure. I failed grade 7 3 times. And in Holland, how things are there is that if you want to be successful or build something, the normal question is, okay, well, that's a good idea, even for a good job, is saying, what is your education? And if I say, well, I did grade 7 for 3 times, I failed grade 3, then they would say that's not very good. So I kind of felt I had to start over again from the beginning with nothing. I didn't, and kids are hard on each other a lot of times. And then after with all my friends, when I failed grade 7 3 times, my friends all went on to college and university and on and on and on. And I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then it was kind of looked down on. But I kind of felt like I was just as smart as everybody else. And I just didn't know why I had so much challenge in school. So I kind of felt I had to start totally new in a different area. So it fitted my dream of going to Canada. It fitted going into the lumber industry, because when I left school at 13, they said to my parents, they said, well, what are you going to do with the guy? So do you send him to the school of mentally challenged, or do you have him learn a trade of some sort? Fortunately, they were beautiful people, so they said, no, that's not what we're going to do. We'll get him a trade. So they sent me to a furniture factory at 13, and I became a furniture maker. I loved it. And so that also laid the foundation for me to further say, lumber is what I want to do, and working with lumber and making furniture and beyond is something that was my dream.
Awesome.
That became a real advantage to me when I was starting off here as a cleanup man in a lumber mill. And then very quickly I became a superintendent. And then I looked for an opportunity. How could I get in the door? So becoming a superintendent didn't go quite far enough, quick enough, although it was within a year and a half. Then I got an opportunity to manage a smaller lumber mill in all places, the Yukon Territory. Now, for those of us that are watching, saying, where is the Yukon Territory? Right next to Alaska. It is from Vancouver north about 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometers. So it's a place where in the July it snows and you're not sure if it is late or early. That kind of a place. It's a real challenge, but I was there for 5 years, became a general manager, then had the option on part ownership in the mill, and then bought property in there, bought a motel that I was staying in. So I've always been entrepreneurial, even when when I came back to Prince George after 5 years, didn't go quick enough for me. Again, I got a job as a superintendent, and then I built a business plan, went to the banks, and about 10 or 12 banks, a very good business plan that I wrote about now 1975, 50 years ago. And even today, the people that work around me, they know my business plan. They say, we're still doing today, but I wrote down then in terms of what are we going to do with the company? Where do I want to go? I went to every single bank. They said it's an excellent idea, but I had no equity. But I focused on one in particular, and then I had a plan that I could lease a building and had the basic concept of what I want to do, something different. And then the last bank that I went to, after changing my business plan about 10 or 12 times, the one day that I went down to the bank, and again, all I was asking for is $25,000 to start a company. And I still remember like yesterday, again, I went to the bank, made sure that the guy didn't get upset with me, but I always made changes that he recommended I should be making. I still remember him going all the way in the bank to 3 cubicles, 4 cubicles further, where the manager was. He said, let me check with the manager. I still remember like yesterday. All of a sudden, I heard this guy 3 booths over. He said, Give him the money, give him the money. So that was the start of my company.
Wow, then
I
you
started
made
with
it.
3 employees. Yeah.
It was a long time ago. How did you make your company last so long? Because a lot of companies, they don't last that long. And was it something that there was not much competition? Still, you've still made it last so long. So what was the secret of success to make your company go so far, knowing that you didn't have that educational business background? You've got the
I
personality with the passion and the work ethic, but it's still,
I love the question, Linda. I love the question. But appears to be a liability became an asset is the fact that I had been working physically in a furniture factory because I was always interested. What are they doing? How are they doing? And I became very, very good at watching. I went to a lot of successful people that gave presentations. I would go far and wide to listen to them. What made them click? Why were they successful? Now, the other part that I have to tell you is that, which I found out much later, but it probably was an advantage, is that after I was here and already had started the companies that I started, starting out smaller and then grew fairly fast, everybody would say to me, "Oh, you're so successful." I didn't feel that way. I still felt that I had failed. And it took me probably from 1965 when I came here in 1975 when I started that company, it took me till I was 57 years old. I walked into a bookstore here in Prince George and I picked up a book, and the title of the book was Driven to Distraction. I don't know why I picked it up.
Mm.
And I opened the book and I looked at it. The book was written by Dr. Halliwell. It was about ADHD. And I said, "Oh my God, now I know who I am." And I wrote in the book in Dutch because I was ashamed of it, because it implied somewhat a mental disorder. Now I finally know who I am. Obviously, we know now, many years later, that that's not what it is. It's in a lot of cases a benefit. I believe that became an asset to me that gave me the energy, and I call it a superpower. But it took me quite a number of years, at least when I picked up the book 5 years later, when I was 57 years old already. It took me even then, after I went to Google, check it out and find out more about it, then I found out it's probably in excess of 8% of the population has or has the benefit of ADHD. Uh, and it took me 5 years to go visit my doc, who was a personal friend. And one day I went into his office when I was 62. And he said, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And so we checked it out, and yes, I do. And so that again, coming to the point that you were asking, that became an asset to me. And I call it today a superpower. It gave me the ability, even today still, a lot of people look at me and say, how do you do all the things that you're doing? I'm an author, I'm a public speaker, I'm obviously very active on podcasting and social media, and I run 10 companies. And I'm very involved in the community, and I do a lot of stuff in the leadership area, give presentations to universities, colleges, young people, blah, 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 on and on and on. You say, how do you do it? I say, ADHD. That's how I do it. you know,
Yeah.
so that likely is one of the foundations. Now, the interesting part about it that you may find, Linda, and our guest watching, is that Dr. Halliwell, who is he? He wrote Driven to Distractions, but he went much further than that. He wrote that in 1993. I bought the book here in 1997. I still have the book. I wrote in there, "Now I finally know who I am." And he has written 18 books altogether, five of them on distraction issues, a lot of them relating to ADHD. Now, my podcast number 203 on the Brink, with John A. Brink, 203, is an interview and a podcast that I did with Dr. Halliwell.
Mm. Wow.
Can you believe it? And so And as we talked about it, obviously I become much more knowledgeable about it. He's probably one of the key individuals globally, knows a lot about it. And I by then already had become quite convinced about the superpower. The other thing that I did is I've written a number of books. My first one that I did is Against All Odds. And that's about, not about hurrah, hurrah, John, how successful he is, but in fact, to the contrary, through all the challenges, the ups and downs all along the way. And then the other book that I felt I had to write about is I wrote a book about ADHD. ADHD Unlocked, I believe, to share with others the challenges of ADHD and the benefits of it from the perspective from me. Obviously, has been a big part of my life. But for all that time, Linda, if I look back, when I was 62, I was diagnosed. Obviously, already by the time I was 13 and failed grade 7 three times, you can pretty much say that for 60 years, really, I had ADHD, not knowing it, and kind of struggling with that I'm different from others in a positive sense. But at the same time, it gave me qualities that other people did not have necessarily, and I mean that in a positive way. Now, the other part that in our discussion with Dr. Halliwell is, as I said to Dr. Halliwell, in my opinion, is that the frequency of occurrence of ADHD, in my opinion, is more than 20%. He said, no, John, it's more than 25%. I found that interesting. The other one that I've said publicly and still do is that I believe successful entrepreneurs and CEOs, and the key here is successful entrepreneurs and CEOs, more than 50%, I suggested to Dr. Halliwell, are ADHD. He said, no, John, more than 75%. And I agree with them. So, so that then shows you, in a way, one of the qualities that I have now, even virtually approaching. Let me show you another picture of a book that will be my last one coming out, or one of the latest ones coming out in July or August. And it's a picture of me here, living young, dying old. And it's a picture of me actually on there. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America, and I'm going to compete again in the Arnold's in 2025, and I'm 85.
Amazing. That's just so incredible. Like all the things that you've done, it just blows my mind how you've used the ADHD as a superpower. You've built 10 companies, like you said, been an author. How do you do all that? Like, is it a form of delegation and just choosing the right people in place that you trust to make sure that they run smoothly? Or like, what's your leadership style in order to be successful? Because some entrepreneurs, they tend to do so much, and then it's easy to fail when you try to do everything yourself too. So what's your secret to success in terms of how you're able to do so much, like without getting burnt out as well? Because you're doing the bodybuilding, all the activities, and your brain still seems very sharp. I've noticed that you've got dates. You've probably got a better memory than a lot of young people, to be honest, like the dates that you can remember, like your brain is sharp. So what's the secret of that success?
Yeah, it's a good question, Linda. Likely I had that already from a very young age. Already when I was a kid, 8, 9, 10 years old, I was already entrepreneurial. I would go sell or deliver newspapers, do anything to help grocery store to put out food in the shelves, anything that I could do, even to the extent, actually, if you see a copy of my book, Against All Odds, I write about, I found an old one-shear plow at one point that was all rusted, and I had an old baby carriage, and I got it on there, and I sold it to an old junk dealer. And then the same day or the following day, I was home, and then the police knocks on the door, and they said, we have to talk to John. Jan was my name in Holland, Jan. Now everybody calls me John. But anyway, so they got me to the door, my mom and the two policemen. And so they said to me, did you take the plow from next door or a couple of houses over? I said, yeah, I did. Yeah. And they said, did you sell it? I said, yeah, I did. I got 5 guldens for it, about $2. And I thought that was good. And they said, you can't do that because it's, that doesn't belong to you. I said, well, it was all rusted and nobody's using it. He said, no, you can't. But they got a real charge out of it, right? So the point that I'm making, I already then was industrious. And then a couple of amazing things. Even when I was in school, I had an amazing memory, still do today. And then the other one, I was very, very good at numbers. And the things that I was not very good at when I'm sitting in school, typical ADHD, I get easily distracted. And if I'm sitting in school and they do a lot of stuff that I have absolutely no interest in, then I'm simply not there. And obviously, we are reacting more to that today. Like, that's why I felt it's so important to write a book about ADHD Unlocked. And it's obviously the frequency of occurrence much higher than we first thought it was. And the other one that I say where this book is, and not only mine, but other ones as well, Dr. Halliwell, for one, obviously, and is that people that have been affected by trauma sometimes are slow learners, are affected by the traditional way of learning and teaching, and to consider that. And then I say in a general way that for the people in a general sense, that no matter where you are in life or what you do, you will encounter people with ADHD either in your family or in your friends or in the broader circle of people where you work. You will encounter them. To read about what makes them click will be interesting and helpful because it is very interesting how they function, somewhat different than a lot of people. And I say that in a positive way. And so it is interesting reading for a lot of people.
But how do you become so successful with doing what you're doing without being burnt out and with running all the companies, looking after your body? How do you do it? Is it delegation and finding the right people?
For certain, you can't do it alone. You have to be a good leader. I believe it comes back to attitude. I'm an optimist. I will always look for positive. I'm always looking. I'm not a yellow screamer. I don't do that. I always try to be reasonable. I like to interact with people, respect them. That's why I always say with other companies where we employ a lot of people, it always starts with respect. I don't care if somebody has been here 5 minutes or 40 years. We will respect them. I don't care about color, green, yellow, orange, whatever they are, religion, sexual orientation. We will not be prejudiced. We will always, always respect. And that's something that I demand. At the same time, we will recognize people and always looking for people that have potential. And those are the key factors to me that are important. On the other hand, what probably made me successful is that very early in life, I knew what career I wanted to follow. I wanted to be entrepreneurial. I wanted to work in the lumber industry like my dad, not owning a company, but worked in there. My grandfather was a master carpenter, and I wanted to do that, and I wanted to be good at it. And I've always looked around for people. You may want to ask me, I'm not saying what you should ask me, but I volunteer this, is saying, okay, John, what were the 3 books that you took with you from Holland? And what did they mean to you? Well, the first one was Management by Drucker in Dutch. Very popular book, actually, for people that are looking at management. The second one was Logical Thinking. To me, it's always been very important. That's why I bought the book. And the other one was about Canada. I've always looked for what makes these successful people tick. And a lot of times I find it to be the same continuous, the same elements that makes them successful. And it's determination, don't give up, and stay consistent. Work towards a goal. The other advantage, probably directly, indirectly related to ADHD, is that I have the ability to think forward for the next 2, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, 25 years. And that has served me well. And that already became obvious with my business plan that I made in 1975 and where I laid it out. And still today we follow the same. We have three main silos in my companies. The one is lumber. The other silo is warehousing, distribution, and logistics. The other one is real estate, primarily commercial and industrial. Those are the areas that I'm active in. I really enjoy it.
No, that's beautiful. What advice do you have for other aspiring entrepreneurs as well?
For the other entrepreneurs, maybe I share with you another book that I wrote here as well. So that will tell you about that somewhat. Is that find your passion. And a lot of times when I give presentations, mainly to young people, a lot of times what I do is I ask them, I say, okay, so what do you want to do for a career? And most of them say, I don't know. I don't know. I said, well,
Mm.
maybe what you should do is start talking to, respectfully, to people that are doing different things and saying, I wonder what is interesting about the jobs that they do or whatever. And so you want to be a truck driver, talk to a truck driver. You want to be a carpenter, talk to a carpenter. If you want to be a contractor, talk to contractors. If you want to be a lawyer, talk to lawyers and doctors or an entrepreneur. The amazing thing I say to them that you will find if you indicate that you're searching for a direction, most of them will be very pleased to interact with you. That's because they would like that. And then why is that important? Because at the same time, I know so many people, Linda, far too many probably, that say, and I saw something on the US, I forget now which main channel, CNN or whatever, one of those, and where they said that up to 75% of the working individuals do not like their job. And 70% of them are looking for another job. And I say, how unfortunate, because there's a whole group of them that say, well, why are you doing what you're doing? Because if you go home, you take that with you. You're not a happy individual, and it
Mm.
affects everybody around you. You say, well, I'm
Mm.
too old. Well, you're never too old, so because all the other things. So I felt I had to write a book about it. So the book that I wrote is this one, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And a fair question would be for you to say, okay, John, are you living your dream? Absolutely, I am. That's why it is so important.
Wow. So you've done so much. I'm curious to know what your ritual is because you're so fit and healthy at 83, still competing in bodybuilding. What's your routine like? Do you meditate? Do you exercise every day? How do you find time to do all that? And I'm just curious to know your actual rituals that you do.
Yeah. So, a couple of things that are important for me is that everybody gets a shock in life. That saying that is I call a wake up call. For me, it came late in 2008. I had a case of diverticulitis, and diverticulitis is a rupture in your colon. And in my case, it was not pain, but rupture
Mm.
that broke, and then the toxins go and attack your organs, and you have to do something about it very quickly. So I came about that close, to not making it. And so it kind of sent me the message that I have to start being much more cautious. My wife is very good. She's a vegetarian, trying to make sure that I do the right thing. Up to that's fine, not as successful as it could have been, obviously. But from there on in, I knew I had to do a couple of things. I had to start paying attention to my diet, and I did that. At the same time, I did another thing that we all do probably. At the end of the year, we say we're going to do this, that, and we're going to buy a membership to the gym. And then for 2 weeks later, we said, I'm far too busy. And all of a sudden, the gym kind of falls away until the following year. Right. So, but I didn't do that. I started to become serious about my diet. I started to go to the gym. And now, around 2009, already by then I was nearly 70, 69. I started to work with a trainer, and I started to work seriously for about 5, 6 years. And then one day in the gym, somebody came walking up to us and saying, "Hey, John, have you ever thought going in competition?" I said, "Who, me?" And so then I said, "Why not?" And so that's what I did. And then started competing a number of years after that. When I was well into my 70s already. And first in northern BC, bodybuilding physique, came in second bodybuilding, third in physique. qualified me for the provincials, came in the same, qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds. Then obviously COVID came, and then so today again I'm competing or going to the gym on a regular basis, being very careful about my diet, and again want to go compete at the Arnolds in 2025 when I'm 85. Hence, and then I thought I have to write a book about that. So in the book is this one that comes out in August, Living Young, Dying Old, and saying that everything is possible.
Yeah, I love it because like when I'm your age, I'm still going to be training at the gym too. I'll keep training, and it's never too late to keep, look after your body and take care of it because your body will look younger as well, and you'll probably feel a lot better and live longer. So I love it.
And you only have one of them, Linda. Your body immensely forgiving, but you
Mm.
cannot abuse it excessively because then at some point, all of a sudden, things go wrong. And the last decade of a lot of people's life is in misery because of things that if they had just tried just a little, there's nothing magic about it. You don't have to become a bodybuilder or anything. You don't have to do that. At least in terms of the basic things are these, at least in my opinion, is that, and I'm not a doc or anything like that. I'm just a person that has lived it and still lives it today, is get enough sleep for one, 7, 8 hours a night, critically important. Watch out for sugar. Limit it as much as you can. For me and my family, at least that's my opinion, we are into plant-based diets. I stay away from the center. If I go to a grocery store, processed
Yeah.
food, I stay away from because I don't know what is in it a lot of times. So I stay in the outside of the store, and it's mainly plant-based. And then, just like I say, stay healthy, stay away from sugar as much as you can, and then get some exercise. Even if you walk 20 minutes a day, this is not becoming a bodybuilder like me, but just stay active. And then you will see amazing how well it feels. But diet is critical and sleep is critical and some of these basic ones. And so what I'm trying to do in my book here is laying out what I did and saying, well, what you're doing is not possible. Most of this started after I was 60.
I love it.
So it can be done.
Yeah, it's all in the mind. What you can believe you can do, you can achieve it. So, how do you define true success? Because you've accumulated so much. You seem to have, a lot of a fulfilling life. You've got your health, you've got your wealth. How do you define success beyond all the material achievements that you've accumulated over the years? What does
It's
success
not,
mean to you?
it's not about money at all. I just need enough to get by. I don't need billions of, immense multi-million. I don't need that, so I like to get by and kind of loop back at saying that respect people, be involved. And to me, but it's always been involved, being involved in community and culture, and then have respect for individuals that wherever we can be helpful, that's what is important to me. And I do that on a daily basis, not to flaunt it all out there, but I'm very sensitive to things where we can be helpful first and foremost. And then obviously, I want to run a successful company, but not for the purpose of making millions of billions of dollars. That's not success to me. I want to be able at when it is the last day that I can good look back and saying it was a good life, you know.
Mm.
So, and then at the same time, knowing that we done good, for all the things around us. And the other part is a pleasure to me, Linda, is podcasting, because I've been a presenter. I do a lot of keynotes, but a lot of those, and that especially away from here, take a lot of time. Time to me is valuable because of all the obvious things. But what I found with podcasting, amazingly, a couple of years ago, so I do probably 12 to 15 podcasts a month where I'm hosting, and then do another 6 or 8 where I'm a guest. And I love that, because I know when I'm podcasting or am a guest, like in your podcast, that we will then show on YouTube or in all our media that we go to, that Tens of thousands of people will watch our discussions. It's immensely powerful, and it's just starting in my mind. And I love
Mm.
that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love podcasting because for me, I love learning, I love reading, but now podcasting allows me to get into the minds of great entrepreneurs, successful people, and learn from them and then share that with the world. That's my goal. So I totally feel you there. What future dreams do you still want to achieve? Is what excites you most? Like, are there anything goals that you want to hit?
Tongue in cheek, I somewhat say I want to be 120. So I'm going to live very healthy and work very hard and all the other kind of things. So, what I found interesting is I saw a study that was done by a doc or a group of doctors that examined 100,000 biopsies that had been done of people.
Mm.
Not a single one of them died of old age, which is amazing. So, my objectives would be to be able to still get up, still have, but is so important to me is what is on my sign here: attitude, passion, work ethic. And obviously as you get older, it's important that you are able to stay active because your body needs more activity to maintain you in a situation. I know so many people, as you do, as that are in their 50s or 60s and say, well, I'm done, and
Mm.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep working. And some people say to me, so John, when are you going to retire? I said, well, I'll retire when I'm old. And I'm not, so I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm writing one book a year, at least that. And
Wow.
going to do podcasting. What we do, I give keynotes for in areas that I believe are important, whatever they may be. And I believe a very active and good speaker. I get everybody excited, especially when I talk about all my discussions are not about ADHD. It's just one point. But by the time I'm done speaking or giving presentations about ADHD, a couple of things that I find amazing. If I say to my guests, may that be 50 or 200 or 500, I usually ask them, how many of you know that they have ADHD? And then the other one, how many of you, in addition to those that know, think that they have? And you find it amazing what happens then. The other part is that by the time I'm done with showing to them what it has done for me, they would say, darn, I wish I had it too.
Do you meditate, John? Because, like, with ADHD, I'm just curious to know, do you meditate? Because your brain is constantly probably overworked, I'm guessing. So, is that
I
something that
find
you
it
do?
very interesting, Linda, that you say that. The answer is no, but I will be doing that in the sense that I had somebody on the podcast a number of podcasts ago that talked about mediation. And basically, what she said, she showed me something to do. She said, just shut down everything and just sit there, close your eyes, and just sit and relax. Only for 5, 6, 7, 20, 30 seconds. You may do it in the plane or in some room. You don't have to close your eyes. You can just sit there and then, relax in your mind. And I like that. And so I'm trying to do that. But I believe that it would be good to do that.
Hmm.
It would probably help or complement what we are doing. Yeah.
Do you have any advice that you'd give to your younger self? And do you have any regrets in life as well? Because you've lived such a fulfilling life. What advice would you give to your younger self? And do you have regrets?
Attitude, passion, work ethic, and respect to everybody and culture. Give back to your community is the one. Regrets, I made probably choices that were not always the best, not critical ones, but in my career, I find it unfortunate in one way and fortunate in another. Like I was 13 when I left grade 7. I questioned myself as to why could I not do what everybody else could, and I was hard on myself in the sense that indirectly I felt I had failed, and it took me till I was 62 until I was diagnosed with ADHD. So for 50 years, I really didn't know. as to why was it that I could not be as successful as others did, and was wondering about what was wrong with me. I would hope, although it did not directly affect me adversely, but I just always wonder about how many young people and not so young people are going through this, that it would change their life. And let me give you an example is that what I did when I wrote the book, I gave a lot of them away. And at one point, I did a presentation, a keynote presentation, west of our city here for about 200 or 300 people, whatever it was. The evening before I did the presentation, a fella came up to me and I was having dinner, and he said, "I don't want to disturb your dinner, but if you have time after that, could you come? I'm sitting there and talk to me." I said, "Sure." So I did that, and he was worked for the community as a counselor, and I had sent books like this to him in other cities that I had sent for free. And he said, "I just wanted to tell you what effect it had on my son that is 15, is then when we got the book, him and me read it together." Can you believe it? So that his young fella was struggling with it. His dad knew that. He didn't know what to do to help him in a way to because he didn't understand, and that my book, would have changed their lives.
Makes you feel
So
good.
yeah, amazing.
The fact that you can change people's lives and impact them in a way that makes you feel, I'm guessing, very fulfilled and very happy.
Yeah, those are things that are very, very important to me.
Yeah, exactly. Life. And I mean, you do philanthropy work as well. So you're contributing to other people's lives and you're making a huge impact. Guys, if you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And if you're listening on the podcast, please do me a favor and hit the follow button. It does help the channel grow and bring on amazing guests like John. John, where can people find you if they want to follow you, hear your podcast? Where can they follow you?
JohnABrink.com. Thanks, Linda. Appreciate it. I
Thank
really love the podcast.
Thank you so much for your time, John. Thank you.